In case you don't know who I am, my name is Miranda Namias, and I do something that I like to call systematic marketing, which is taking complex marketing strategies and breaking them down into easy to follow systems that anyone can create in their business. But today I want to talk about something that is a little bit more personal and not necessarily about like marketing or tips or anything like that. If you want marketing tips, make sure to check out the videos on my Facebook page. I go live a couple times a month, and there are plenty of older videos with lots of tips that you can watch. But today, I really want to talk about how I got started as an entrepreneur because I think that it's a pretty good story and it's a little strange, and I think that everybody's story of how they get started is unique and means something and is important to how they've built their business and why they built their business. And so I'm going to talk about mine today. So growing up, both my grandfather and my grandfathers on both sides of my family own their own business, and my dad ended up taking over the business that was his dad's. So growing up, I actually had like a really big background in like my family being entrepreneurs and running their own business, but I like vehemently never ever ever wanted to own my own business. Like I can vividly remember having multiple conversations with my dad about this, how he would always kind of joke that when I got older I was going to take over his business, and I was always like, no, like I definitely do not want to run my own business ever, 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 ever. And he was like, yeah, you say that now, but like you're totally going to end up owning your own business. And I 100% thought he was wrong. Like I was diehard, like I am never going to run my own business. And the reason why I was so dead set against it is because I saw how hard my dad worked. He was always really stressed out, and it seemed like there was so much pressure and responsibility that he had to deal with in running his own business. And so I saw that, and to me, it kind of seemed like the worst thing ever. Like, I definitely did not want that. Not to mention, like, making big decisions and managing other people. I was just, like, totally not about that life. I was convinced that I was much more, like, set out for being a traditional 9 to 5 worker in an office job in a corporate world. I just thought like it would be so much better. There's so much less responsibility, so much less stress, so much less pressure, and having to like manage other people and be responsible for their livelihoods. But what I didn't realize that, like as a kid, is that yes, a traditional 9 to 5 office job is a lot less responsibility and a lot less stress. But on the flip side of that, it's also a lot less fun, a lot less enjoyable, less fulfilling, less satisfying. Often, I'm not going to say always, but typically that's the case. And there's also a lot of things that you give up when you choose to work for somebody else versus work for yourself. And more than anything, I personally, my goal sort of in life, I guess, is that I want to be happy. I want to have a really great life where I wake up every day and I am just so excited to experience that day. And I just want to be happy in everything that I do day in and day out. And so eventually, as I grew up and I kind of experienced a little bit more and understood more about my dad and about his business and about everything in life, eventually I just kind of realized that this sort of happy lifestyle that I had envisioned for myself and that I really wanted to shoot for was just not going to happen unless I started my own business. And I just think it's so funny because I always said that I was never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was convinced that my dad was wrong when he said that I was going to be an entrepreneur and I would never own my own business. But even though I always thought I really, really did not want that, almost everything that I did, like growing up, was in complete opposition to what I was saying. It just wasn't until later that I realized that I was doing this. So like when I was little, I used to do things like run lemonade stands, and I actually had like a business in 5th grade where I would clean other people's desks at recess. So they would like hire me to like clean their desks. I've always been very organized, even as a kid. And I would say like I've always been kind of like anti-establishment, and always very like butting heads against authority. Like I had some problems with my teachers. I was never like a troublemaker as a kid. I was always super like smart kid, got good grades, but I would like argue with my teachers. I'd be like, no, your opinion is wrong here, and like want to have a debate with them, and they're like, no, you're in high school, like we're not having a debate right now, this isn't college. But I was always like never took what authority figures said as like concrete, or like I always was like, well, if I have a different opinion, that's okay. And as a kid, that isn't always like the attitude that adults want you to have. And I just always had this thing where like I really thought that respect should be earned and not just given to authority figures. And so as a kid, like I did struggle with this, and I can definitely see how I might not be I might not be like the type of person that works really well in a typical 9 to 5 office job, because I have that sort of issue with authority, and I always really strive to just like achieve, and I always want to be like in charge. So I think that this like running my own business was always what was going to happen, even though I never saw it that way as a kid. I never really considered myself to be like anti-authority because I was always such a goody two-shoes and did really well in school and everything. And I don't know, it's just weird. Looking back in hindsight, I'm like, oh my god, like I was totally like an entrepreneur even as a kid. I even like started a couple blogs as I was growing up. I never really seriously thought that I would make any money about it at it. I was never about like building a career, but I just think it's weird that like even way before I ever even considered running my own business, subconsciously it was almost like I was preparing for it. Like fate or whatever was like, you're gonna run your own business, like you'll see. And now looking back, it almost kind of seems like this foregone conclusion that eventually I was gonna be an entrepreneur, even though I never seriously considered it or was even remotely interested in it until right before I launched my business in 2015. I kind of discovered the world of online business and realized, wow, like running your own business, being an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to necessarily have that bad side of it that I saw as a kid, where it's like you're so stressed out, you are like in charge of other people's livelihoods. Like, yeah, you can go that path, but a lot of the things that I was seeing were things more related to having a brick and mortar business. But it wasn't until I realized that like, oh, there's this whole world of online business where you get all the good parts of running your own business and you get to avoid a lot of the bad parts of owning your own business. So when I discovered that this was actually a thing, I realized like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. This is completely the perfect path for me, and I just never even realized it. So yeah, I just wanted to tell that story. Sorry if I was kind of rambly and going on, but I do think that that story is kind of interesting, and it shows a little bit about like how I started in my thought process and kind of life path that I was going on. And I also just want to say that I think it's important not to like count things out in life, whether it's a certain life path or I don't know, even like a movie or something, or like a person, that you sort of have these like preconceived notions of what your life is gonna look like, what it's not gonna look like, what that thing looks like or doesn't look like, or what it's gonna be like. And it's just not always the case. Like you can be the best like judge of character. Like I think that I'm a really good judge of character, but maybe I just didn't like judge my own character well enough or something. I just don't think that you should ever count things out. Like, never say never. And as a kid, I was definitely like, never. But now I'm so glad that I opened my mind to the possibility of being an entrepreneur. And even though it was kind of like, oh, like I can't believe I was so diehard and I would never do this, and then I ended up doing it. I'm just like, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. And my dad likes to make fun of me for it. But at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is amazing and I love it, and I'm so glad that I made this decision. And I don't necessarily think that it's the right path for everybody, but like I kind of explained, I really had the personality for it even as a young kid. And ultimately, I'm really glad that I took the leap to start my own business. And if anybody's watching this and they're thinking about starting their own business, they haven't done it yet, I would really encourage you to think seriously about it, because it is great. I love it so much. And yeah, I love being an entrepreneur now. Who would have thought?